Good morning. Today is Monday, August 18th, and I am Diane Sare with the LaRouche Organization Morning Update. So today, a gaggle of European, as some may call them, the coalition of the killing, coalition of the willing, will be joining Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House, where they are probably going to try to undermine the agreements, the discussion, I should say, between Presidents Trump and Putin, aimed not to get a ceasefire, as President Trump correctly said, which would be short-lived and had a lot of problems, but to actually come to a peace agreement to end the war in such a way that it is not going to be immediately restarted. And I will get to that in a minute. Otherwise, yesterday, President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, was on various talking heads shows, including CNN with Jake Tapper and Fox News with Shannon Bream. Both of these hosts were trying to toe the British deep state Russiagate line that the summit was a failure because President Trump did not get a ceasefire. Witkoff, on the other hand, said that he thought they made great progress, that he said we agreed to robust security guarantees that what I would describe as game-changing. Then Tapper, in the CNN interview, said that there might be a land swap. Isn't this terrible? And Witkoff said, look, the 5 regions, and that is Crimea, Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. The Russians have previously said they wanted at the administrative lines and the actual boundary lines as compared to the contact lines. He said the Russians made some concessions at the table with regard to all 5 of those regions. I doubt with regard to Crimea, if that's the region he's talking about, but who knows? And he said there is an important discussion to be had with regard to Donetsk and what would happen there. And that discussion will be held on Monday when President Zelensky arrives at the White House. Now, and Witkoff also emphasized in the interview on Fox that what Trump is working on is a peace package, not just a ceasefire. Now, for their part, the European leaders, if you can call them that, had an emergency meeting in Brussels to figure out what to do since the summit went so well. And Ursula von der Leyen, the liar-in-chief who has no business being in her position with the European Commission, asserted that borders cannot be changed by force. Well, that's a fine thing to say, Ursula von der Leyen. Where are you with regard to what Israel is doing now in the West Bank? Is that not changing borders by force? And what about Israel being about to invade Gaza altogether? Where does the European Commission stand on that, on all of these European leaders? Why are you still sending weapons to Israel? Why are you not doing something to break the blockade to end the starvation? So don't give us that nonsensical lecture. And then she went on to say, Ukraine must become a steel porcupine, undigestible for potential invaders. So that's that. And the leaders who are going to be joining Zelensky are Macron of France, Starmer of the UK, Merz of Germany, Meloni of Italy, and also Stubb of Finland, as well as von der Leyen and Zelensky. So we'll see how that all goes. Hopefully they will have a dismal failure in moving Trump to back down on anything that he discussed with President Putin. Ultimately, of course, Zelensky will be involved in these discussions, but since Zelensky doesn't really exist, he's not a legitimate leader given that he canceled elections. He's an unconstitutional dictator right now, and everything he has done has been at the instruction of American and British intelligence agencies. Really, why does he have to be listened to or given so much weight in this? Now, Macron told reporters that the meeting in Brussels lasted a little over 2 hours, and they want to present a united front when the leaders meet Trump tomorrow. Now, Trump to Zelensky, who's been screaming about how he's not going to make any compromises on territory. This is a guy whose country is now kidnapping people and forcing them to the front lines, who is also refusing, by the way, and this is so cruel, and it just tells you wanted to return 1,000 prisoners, and Zelensky refused to accept them. Can you imagine that? And the prisoners are now writing letters demanding, why are you only accepting 50? Why are only special prisoners being allowed to return to our homeland? Why can't all of us return? President Trump weighed in on that also and said Ukraine will take their prisoners back and allow them to return to their families. But again, what authority, what legitimacy does this dictator Zelensky have in Ukraine? Now, in the response to Zelensky saying he's not going to concede anything on territory, Trump wrote on Truth Social, Ukraine must be willing to lose some territory to Russia. Otherwise, the longer the war goes on, they will lose even more land. And that's just simply true. Russia is winning the war no matter what crazy people like Boris Johnson and others wish to say. Now, all the European leaders are not that crazy. Of course, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, said the summit has made the world a safer place. He said, for years, we have watched the two biggest nuclear powers dismantle the framework of their cooperation and shoot unfriendly messages back and forth. This has now come to an end. Today, the world is a safer place than it was yesterday. May every weekend be at least this good. Also welcoming the summit were the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico. So everybody isn't quite as insane as Ursula von der Leyen. That's a very, do you want to call it a high bar or low bar of insanity? But people are. Now, on the question of Israel, as people are aware, on August 10th, a 28-year-old journalist, Anas al-Sharif, was brutally assassinated in a tent with several other journalists, three other journalists or five other journalists outside of a hospital. And it turns out that Israel established a special military unit called the Legitimization Cell, specifically to target journalists, of whom 270 journalists have been killed in Gaza. And what this group does, it's very much like the Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation list, which Harley Schlanger and I are both on, saying that we are spreading disinformation and therefore we're war criminals. Well, what this group does is it says these journalists must be secretly working for Hamas. If you're in a combat zone, that's equivalent to putting a target on them. And what they say is that Anas al-Sharif was targeted for quite some time as being a Hamas propagandist. The Israeli IDF spokesperson said that he was a propagandist and he was participating in Hamas's false starvation campaign. No, there is real starvation going on in Gaza thanks to the blockade. Now, what some say is that al-Sharif has been highly visible and Israel could have killed him at any time, but they think Israel chose to kill him now with the other journalists in a very high-profile way because they want to have a media blackout before their anticipated military assault on Gaza City. Now, meanwhile, in Israel, things are going very badly for Netanyahu. On Sunday, hundreds of thousands of protesters were expected at up to 300 locations. And this is organized largely by groups representing the families of the hostages who are demanding a political deal to bring the hostages home and end the war. Recent opinion polls in Israel show that 80% of Israelis approve. They want a deal to end the war and get the hostages free. They're not interested in continuing fighting and starvation. And apparently some of the protesters were even carrying signs depicting starving Palestinian children. And apparently the media blackout in Israel of the starvation, of the horrific conditions being imposed by the Netanyahu regime on the Palestinian people are beginning to come to the fore. So this is very important. It's a shifting world. It is very urgent that President Trump hold firm on his commitment to normalizing relations with Russia. And to that end, the work that is being done by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to continue to release new documents as they're coming to light on those people involved in perpetrating this massive criminal fraud is very important. And I would urge listeners to please go to thelarouche.org. We have a special page on the Russiagate scandal, which we are updating with the new document drops from Tulsi Gabbard. We will be posting later today an updated timeline with a lot of the details of the role of the British intelligence in specific. And also, let me inform you, in case you didn't know, that the morning updates are also available on SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. Thank you for listening, and we'll be talking soon.